For Radio VR in Washington, I'm Kate Zickel. It's been 1 year since the Boston Marathon bombing left 3 people dead and 260 wounded. A year later, Boston is still standing strong as the city recovers from the horrific act of terror. 29-year-old Crystal Campbell, 23-year-old Lingzu Liu, and 8-year-old Martin William Richard did not survive the bomb blast at the Boston Marathon bombing on April 15th of 2013. Rich Harwood is a national expert on transforming communities, including Newtown, Connecticut, after the shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School. He joins me now to talk about how Boston and the survivors of those bombings are working to recover a year later. Rich, thanks for joining me.
Good to be with you, Kate.
Now, Rich, it's been a year, and for a lot of people that's a long time, but for other people, not so much. What can you say, a year later, with the people that have been suffering and recovering and trying to get their lives back on track over the last year? I know the marathon, of course, in Boston went ahead as usual, as it does every year, but obviously this year it's been special.
Yeah, I think this is a special moment for the community and really for the rest of the country. I think the Boston community itself has demonstrated that it was able to respond to the bombing and I think show just how resilient that community is. The bombing became a defining moment for the community, but it didn't come or hasn't come to define that community. For the individuals who were injured in the bombing, I think, each individual, each family bounces back on their own timetable in their own way. There's no way really to predict how fast or slow that will go, and people just need room and a lot of support to make their way through something as horrific and as inexplicable as this.
Now, we've seen several survivor stories over the last year, but specifically leading up over the last week or so to this tragic anniversary. But there are a few people who stand out. We had JP and Paul Norden, who were brothers, who each lost a leg in the bombing. Adriana Haslett Davis, who was the dance teacher, who also lost a leg. And she promised, she said, someday I am going to dance again. You cannot stop me from doing this. And recently actually got back on the dance floor with this bionic leg that was created for her specifically. We've seen several other young people who have gone on to graduate from high school, move on to college. A lot of really great success stories that have come out of this very sad event. But it's been really neat to kind of look back and see how well people have done and have recovered. And it seems to me like that's really a community effort.
It is a community effort. And I think for those individuals, like the two brothers you mentioned, it's a sign of the strength of the human spirit, of our ability to withstand shock and trauma and to come back from it. But I think, as you suggested, we can't forget, you can't make perfect a situation that is intrinsically imperfect, that it was horrific for these individuals who went through it, particularly those who were injured. And it takes time, just like the two brothers said in a recent interview that I just read. Each day is a new day for them. Some days it's hard to get out of bed. Some days it's a bit easier. The easiest things that, one of the brothers was talking about how, just getting out of bed in the morning to go to the bathroom becomes an ordeal for him. And so I think as we see these signs of sort of steps forward by these individuals, we have to keep reminding ourselves that each and every day is hard for them or can be hard for them. And they really need support and a community support to keep moving forward.
There was a young man, and I don't remember his name, but he and his fiance were at the marathon together at the time that those bomb blasts went off. He lost, I believe it was a foot. And in an interview that he gave, he said that even just walking across the room, getting up from the couch and walking across his living room towards his kitchen was just about as much energy as he had in one day. And it's amazing to me how some of these extremely brave young men and women have really pushed themselves to new levels to say, you know what, I am going to put my life back to normal as much as possible, and really push themselves to, even some of them, I believe, have shown up to run at least part of the marathon again this year. And I think it really speaks to the strength of Boston. We have that saying, Boston's strong, but it really does speak to the strength of the community, but also the strength of character of the people who are working very hard to say, you know what, I'm going to go back and get a normal life.
Yeah, it demonstrates again that we can if we're fortunate, bounce back and remake our lives. Right? There's no way to return back to what was for these individuals. They need to create something new moving forward, and it just goes to show the resilience of the human spirit, the ability to bounce back. But I think what I would say in sort of celebrating those moves forward, I think we need to continually remind ourselves that it takes a lot of support, it takes a lot of energy, that every day is a new day, new challenges moving forward. And the reason why I say that is because in the spirit of the celebration this year, we ought not to forget that you can't sweep these things under the rug and pretend they didn't happen, everything is back to normal. It's that we need to move forward, and in moving forward, we find new ways to live our lives, not to simply go back to the way they were, because for many people, they simply can't go back to the way they were.
Well, that's a really good point, Rich. I mean, a lot of people are probably still remembering and thinking about the fact that while one of the young men responsible for this sad event is dead, the other is still in jail, and we don't know. We don't know when that trial is going to take place. We don't know how that's going to turn out. And for the survivors of this act of terrorism, it can't be easy to wonder how that's going to turn out.
Absolutely right. I was involved in the aftermath of the Newtown massacre, where 20 kids, first graders, were shot down in Sandy Hook Elementary School and 6 educators. And over the last 12 to 15 months, each time a new report came out, the time that the 911 tapes where people inside the school were calling for police help, as the anniversary, the 1-year anniversary rolled around, each new event, in a sense, after the tragedy reminds people, often takes them back through the series of events that they had to live through on that horrific day. And so you're right, you're not quite sure, as this trial plays out with this young man who's now in custody, for those folks who were affected, it will be a new trial for them, a new test for them as that plays out over time.
Well, Rich, we unfortunately only have a few minutes left, but I did want to talk a little bit about some of the support groups that are available and how they have worked over the last year as well to really garner a lot of encouragement for those who have been dealing with this, their families. There's been funds that have been raised. One Boston Fund is one of them. Obviously, Boston Strong is another. In an instance like this, how do communities work to really pull together other than trying to do support groups? Are there things that people can do to say, you know what, even though it's been a year, I really want to try to help and do what I can to make sure that the people who are affected by these types of events know that they're not alone?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's striking to me after something like the Boston bombings or the Newtown massacre or the Columbine event back in 1999, at each time Americans from all walks of life, and I think people from many countries, stepped forward and sent in donations, sent goods and stuffed animals, and displayed signs in front of their homes or from bridges. And I think all of these things are important because they're a way for us not only to privately grieve and to express our compassion for other people, but they're a way for us to collectively do this as a community. And I think right now, at least in the United States, I think what so many people are wrestling with is how do I come back? I think there's a yearning among Americans to come back into the public square, into community life, to be part of something larger than just themselves, more than just consumer, gaining more than just material goods. And I think people's response to these events is a sign of a kind of both collective memory that we don't want to forget what happened, and a collective expression of compassion, which I think not only benefits those who are harmed, but I think has some residual positive effects for the rest of us, because we right. so much want to be part of something larger.
Well, Rich, thank you again so much for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time to discuss this very sad story with us, but also to discuss the encouraging things that we've seen for those in the recovery process. That's Rich Harwood. Rich is a national expert on transforming communities. He's been joining us to speak about the anniversary of the Boston Marathon bombing. Rich, thanks again.
Thanks so much.